All right, folks, welcome to part 2 on our urinary system unit, where we're going to take a look at the kidneys and how kidneys produce urine and help to regulate the amount of materials in blood. So let's take a general look at the structure of the kidneys first. From the outside in, we have the renal cortex on the outside. Okay, moving inward, and those contain the nephrons, which are the functional units of the kidneys, the parts that actually do the filtration of the blood and make the urine. The renal medulla, which collects what was made by the nephrons, and which is basically just a passageway then, and the renal pelvis, which is also a collecting area passageway before it gets out to the bladder. So here we can see here around the outer edge, that's the cortex, and you can see lots of small blood vessels, little arterioles and venules, and then there's capillaries in there, which you can't see, and that's where the nephrons reside that actually make the urine and filter the blood. Then we can see the renal medulla in the middle, okay, where it's collecting it, and then we see the renal pelvis where it's collecting before it then eventually goes out through the ureter. Let's take a look at that functional unit, the nephrons. They are the main unit of function of the urinary system. They form urine. Two main parts, the glomerulus or Bowman's capsule, and the renal tubule. Okay. The part that surrounds the glomerulus is called the glomerular or Bowman's capsule. Okay, of the renal tubule, sorry. So here we can see we've got blood going in, and we got this ball of capillaries, which is the glomerular capsule. Those are under high pressure, and then the vessel leaves there through these little arterioles and capillaries, and then it's cupped in this yellow claw-looking thing. That's the glomerular or Bowman's capsule, and down into the rest of the nephron. So, glomerulus, big ball of capillaries. Blood is under high pressure, which forces or filters the particles out of the blood. Remember, we talked about this way back when we did cell transport. We talked about simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, active transport, exos and endocytosis, which are all mediated at the cellular level. Filtration is when you're literally forcing fluids across a membrane by sheer water pressure, okay, or blood pressure in this case. So we're literally forcing stuff through the glomerulus and into the Bowman's capsule. Okay, and that filtrate, the stuff that gets through that filter, contains everything in the blood but the big blood cells and proteins. So it's purely size-based. Big proteins and blood cells can't get through. Everything else does, basically all the plasma and everything dissolved in it. So we can see that happening here. Comes in under high pressure, forces the filtrate through those pores and into the Bowman's capsule or glomerular capsule. So now once we get into that capsule, we can now enter the renal tubule. Or wait, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So we're still in the glomerular capsule that surrounds the glomerulus. It collects the filtrate, highly porous, so it lets pretty much everything in except for blood cells and large proteins. Okay. We can see here, we can see that porosity. So smaller things can get through, bigger things can't. So now we're in the renal tubule. The rest of the tube continues to the collecting duct, but it's very convoluted and twisty and turny and surrounded with lots and lots of capillaries. The long part of it's called the loop of Henle, by the way. Why would we see a very long, twisty, turny tube with lots of capillaries around it? Yeah, surface area. Rears its beautiful head again in anatomy. More surface area means more places for transfer of molecules between the blood and something else. In this case, between the blood and the urine. So we can see that here. It's big, long, twisty, turny. We've got the big loop of Henle down here. Lots of surface area for exchange. And what's going to happen here is we've already pushed everything out of the bloodstream, right? All that's left in the bloodstream at this point is blood cells and big proteins. So all that other stuff is now in the renal tubule. Most of that we want to get back into the blood. So that's what we call reabsorption. We reabsorb it back into the blood from the tubule. Okay? How much and what we reabsorb back into the blood is a big part of how the kidney controls water, ion, and blood chemistry in our blood. You push everything out and just bring back in what you want. Water is passive, it's just straight osmosis. Most of the rest, though, is mediated by active transport. So the body can make decisions to turn on a pump to pump sodium one way or leave it out, or it can turn off a pump to pump sodium. to regulate the amount of sodium in the blood, for instance. So urine formation and adjustment of blood composition involves three major processes. First, glomerular filtration, which happens up at the top there, where the glomerulus and the glomerular capsule are. You push everything out of the blood. And then further on, in the loop of Henle and the rest of the tubes, you've got tubular reabsorption, where that's B there, reabsorb all the good stuff you want back into the blood. Sometimes a little bit of stuff you don't want gets back in there, so you do a little bit more secretion and push that stuff out of the blood at the end, and then you've got perfectly balanced blood, hopefully, and whatever you didn't want in there, which is now urine, which you'll move on out of the body. So let's make an analogy to this one. Let's say that you, and I hope you don't do this, but let's say you're like every 80s, 90s, teen, early 2000s teen movie you've ever seen, where your parents are in town, so you decide to throw a small party for your friends. Okay, but word gets around and lots of folks show up, way more folks show up than you want, and lots of people you don't want. You know, maybe some bad actors are going to mess up your house or start drinking or something illegal, and you don't know what to do about it. You can't get rid of them. So what are you going to do? Well, all those people in your house is kind of like all the junk in your blood. You got the stuff you want in the blood, plus you got some stuff you don't want in the blood. So one thing you could do is you could, go outside and yell, "The cops are coming! Everybody out!" So nobody knows it's you. And then everybody clears out of the house. You kick everybody out of the house except yourself and the food which you want to keep in there, which that'd be like the blood vessels and the blood cells and the protein. And everybody else runs for the hills. Yay! But now you got no party with your friends like you wanted in the first place. So what do? You text or Snapchat or whatever it is you youngins do these days, and you let just your friends know that no cops to worry about. Everything's safe. They can come back. Don't bring any of the yahoos back with them. Keep it on the low down, right? So you text them and they come back, and maybe Jill's little dorky brother Ethan comes along. So that bringing everybody back is the reabsorption, right? Getting back in the stuff you want, leaving the bad stuff out. Okay, and then Jill's little brother Ethan comes in. You don't really want him there. He's too young. You don't want him here with the crowd cramping your style. So you would kick Ethan out and tell him to go home. And that would be like the secretion, the last little bit where you kind of fine tune it a little bit. So that's how the kidneys work. Kick everything out, reabsorb what you want, and then one last little bit of kick out if you need to get everything into the blood that you want, all the bad stuff in the urine. So how do we regulate the blood, guys? In a day, we'll filter about 165 liters of blood plasma. And of that 165 liters that goes through your kidneys, we only get rid of about 1.4 liters. So most of it is good. We just get rid of 1.4 milliliters on average if you're well hydrated to keep your blood clean. Another way to think of it is every little blood cell and molecule goes through the kidneys 33 times per day on average. So you're filtering every little inch of your blood 33 times over the course of the day. More than once an hour, your blood goes through a filter. Okay, and urine is filtrate. Stuff that was pushed out in the glomerulus, with most of the good stuff reabsorbed. Okay. Nitrogenous waste. Urine is full of nitrogenous waste, which is urea, which is formed in the liver from the breakdown of amino acids. Okay. How do we maintain water balance? We must not lose more water than we take in, right? How do we get water in? We drink it. Some of it's in our food when the food's moist, and about 10% of our water needs come from just metabolizing the food. The process for cellular respiration actually produces some water as a byproduct. How do we lose water? Perspiration, urine, feces, exhalation, all lose water. We want what we take in and what we lose to be balanced on a daily basis. If anything, take in a little bit more than you lose. If we're losing too much water, the kidneys will reabsorb more water from the filtrate back into the blood, so they won't let as much water leave, right? And that'll make your urine a little denser, a little more concentrated. If we have too much water or more water than we need, your kidneys will just let that water stay in the tubules. It won't reabsorb as much of it, and then you can pee it out. Okay, and you'll see that in your urine too. We will do a urine test on your urine in this class, and you'll be able just visually be able to tell if you're getting enough water or not. If it's a little dark, you're a little dehydrated, you're not drinking enough, your body's hanging on to more of it. If you're well hydrated, the urine will be really clear or pretty clear. So how do we regulate that water? We do it with something called antidiuretic hormone, ADH, which is produced by the hypothalamus. Antidiuretic. Now, diarrhea, you guys probably know from defecation, right? If you have diarrhea, that means you've got really watery poop coming out. That usually happens because you're moving things through the large intestine too fast for the large intestine to absorb all the water out of it like it normally should. Usually it's a bug or something like that where you're trying to get it out of your system. That would be diarrhea. Antidiuretic hormone with the kidneys, that causes the duct cells to reabsorb more water back into the blood and let less out. Okay, and that by bringing more water back into the blood, your blood volume goes up, which in turn causes an increase in your blood pressure. So that's how we also regulate that. And it causes a decrease in urine volume, which means your urine is more concentrated. You don't lose much water, but you still got to get rid of the rest of the waste products. How does the kidney help us with maintaining pH balance? It works slowly, but well. The equation on the bottom we looked at in the respiration unit, where we're talking about how do we move carbon dioxide in and out of the body, and it gets tied up in carbonic acid and bicarbonate ions. Well, actually what it's doing, if we remember us talking about, is regulating those hydrogen ions there, the pH in the blood. Okay, if we have too much carbon dioxide, okay, we got to get rid of it. So it's got too much hydrogen out there, so we get rid of the carbon dioxide. On the other hand, if we don't have enough, we breathe slower, right? That takes care of the carbon dioxide in the blood, but how do you balance the bicarbonate ions, the other side of that salt there in our blood? That we control by excreting or reabsorbing bicarbonate. So that's long-term pH balance. Medium-term pH balance is breathing out carbon dioxide, and short-term pH balance is just this reversible equation happening in the blood all the time, second to second. Urine itself is yellow in color, and that comes from the breakdown of hemoglobin. That's why bruises will turn from that kind of dark purple to a green to a yellow before they disappear. That's the hemoglobin breaking down. And when you got some of the dark red, purple, and some of the yellow together, you get that greenish in between, and then yellow's at the end. So you see that there in the breakdown of the hemoglobin. Okay. That's also why sweat stains are yellow, because they have the same stuff in them. So sweat's very much like urine, just not as concentrated as urine generally. Urine is sterile, generally acidic, and aromatic, meaning it smells. So if I was out in the wilderness and didn't have any access to clean water and I got a bad wound I needed to clean, would I want to use some dirty pond water, or would it be better to use my urine? It would frankly be better to use your urine to clean off the wound. It should be sterile generally. It's going to be slightly acidic, which will help kill some of that stuff, and it's can even break down into ammonia. If you leave urine out for a while, it will turn into ammonia, along with some other junk in there, but it'll turn into ammonia. In the past, this was used to turn leather white. It was good for that. And it was also used for washing clothing. When they didn't have a lot of soap and stuff available and they wanted to whiten their laundry and clean their laundry, they would actually pee in the pot, let it sit for a while, not like hours, but days, and then they could use that old urine to wash their laundry or turn the leather white, and you'd be good to go. I know it sounds gross, but we did it. That's where the saying, you're so poor you don't have a pot to piss in, because if you were poor enough, you couldn't even afford a pot to piss in. You couldn't make money by selling your urine to laundries or tanneries for doing laundry or doing turning leather white and lightening it up, because they couldn't make the urine from it. It was a big business back in the day in many cities, was urine collection and feces collection too, for manure, basically, for gardens and things. Urine should contain sodium, potassium ions, urea, uric acid, creatine, ammonia, bicarbonate, and other odds and ends of ions. It is not normal for it to contain glucose, blood proteins, blood cells, or bile. If it contains any of those, something else is going on. And that's why it's one of the things they're checking for when they do a urine sample at the doctor, is they're going to say, do you have what you're supposed to have, and are you missing what you're supposed to be missing? And if you've got something that you're not supposed to, that can point to a few different things that might be causing that. And we will do this, if we haven't already done this, in class, and do a lab where you're testing for a lot of those things in your urine. And that will do it for the notes on our urinary system. We'll come back and do the lab and answer any questions later in class. Talk to you next time, guys. Have a good day.